During the Ice Age, ocean conditions were much colder than they are today, yet many marine animals grew to very large sizes. Species such as whales and fish reached sizes greater than similar animals in warmer periods. Lower temperatures also slow metabolism, allowing energy to be used more efficiently for growth. These factors combine to create conditions where increasing in size becomes beneficial, helping animals survive, compete, and reproduce more effectively in cold marine environments. The phenomenon of Ice Age giants refers to a remarkable pattern in prehistoric life where many animals that lived during extremely cold periods grew to unusually large sizes compared to their modern relatives. These animals lived during what scientists call the Ice Age, a time marked by long-lasting cold climates, spreading glaciers, and dramatic environmental changes. Instead of shrinking to cope with harsh conditions, many species became larger, heavier, and more powerful. This trend has attracted the attention of scientists for many years because it challenges simple ideas about survival. It raises an important question: why would animals grow bigger in a world that seems so difficult to live in? When we talk about Ice Age giants, we are referring to a wide range of animals that lived across different parts of the world. These include massive land mammals, such as the woolly mammoth, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, and enormous bison. In the oceans, there were also very large creatures, including giant whales and other marine animals that thrived in cold waters. Even birds and smaller creatures in some regions showed signs of increased size. What makes these animals so interesting is not just their size, but the fact that their large bodies were not random. Their size was closely connected to the cold environments in which they lived. One of the most well-known examples of an Ice Age giant is the woolly mammoth. This animal looked similar to modern elephants, but was much better adapted to cold climates. It had a thick coat of fur, long curved tusks, and a large body that helped it survive in freezing temperatures. Its size was not just for strength or appearance. A larger body helped it keep warm by reducing the amount of heat it lost to the cold air. This is because bigger animals have a smaller surface area compared to their volume, meaning they lose heat more slowly than smaller animals. In a cold environment, this can make a huge difference between survival and death. This idea is part of a scientific concept often called Bergmann's rule. This rule explains that animals living in colder climates tend to be larger than those living in warmer climates. The reason is simple but powerful. Heat escapes from the surface of a body. If an animal has a large body, it has more mass inside to hold heat, but not as much surface area compared to that mass. This helps the animal stay warm. On the other hand, smaller animals lose heat more quickly because they have a larger surface area compared to their volume. In a cold world like the Ice Age, being large was an advantage. The connection between cold climates and gigantism can also be seen in modern animals. For example, animals that live in colder regions today, such as polar bears, tend to be larger than similar animals in warmer regions. This pattern supports the idea that size is linked to temperature. During the Ice Age, this effect became even stronger because the cold conditions lasted for very long periods of time, allowing animals to evolve larger bodies over many generations. Another reason why Ice Age animals grew so large is related to food and energy. Cold environments can be harsh, but they can also support large amounts of plant life during certain seasons. In some Ice Age regions, there were vast grasslands filled with tough, cold-resistant plants. These areas, sometimes called mammoth steppes, provided food for large herbivores like mammoths and giant bison. Because food was spread out over large areas, animals needed to travel long distances to find enough to eat. A larger body made this easier. Bigger animals could store more energy and travel further without needing to eat constantly. Large size also helped animals defend themselves. During the Ice Age, there were many powerful predators, including saber-toothed cats and large wolves. Being bigger made it harder for predators to attack successfully. For herbivores, size could mean the difference between life and death. For predators, being large also had benefits. Bigger predators could take down larger prey and compete more effectively with other hunters. This created a kind of balance where both predators and prey grew larger over time. The oceans during the Ice Age also showed signs of gigantism. Cold water has a special property that plays an important role in this. It holds more oxygen than warm water. Oxygen is essential for life because it allows animals to produce energy. In cold oceans, the higher oxygen levels made it easier for marine animals to grow larger. This is one reason why some of the largest animals on Earth, such as whales, are found in colder waters. Even today, many large marine species prefer cooler environments. In addition to oxygen, cold water also affects how animals use energy. Larger marine animals are more efficient at moving through water. Their size helps them conserve energy while swimming long distances. This is especially important in cold environments where food may not always be easy to find. By being larger, these animals could travel further and survive longer periods without eating. Another important factor is time. The Ice Age lasted for tens of thousands of years. This gave animals enough time to slowly evolve larger bodies through natural selection. Natural selection is the process by which traits that improve survival and reproduction become more common over generations. In a cold environment, animals with slightly larger bodies had a better chance of surviving and passing on their genes. Over many generations, this led to the development of truly giant species. It is also important to understand that not all animals became larger during the Ice Age. Some species remained small, especially those that had different ways of surviving. For example, small animals could hide in burrows, find shelter more easily, or reproduce quickly. These strategies allowed them to survive without needing to grow larger. This shows that gigantism was just one of many possible solutions to the challenges of the Ice Age. The idea of Ice Age giants also helps scientists learn more about the past. Fossils of these large animals provide valuable information about ancient environments, climates, and ecosystems. By studying their bones, teeth, and other remains, scientists can understand what these animals ate, how they lived, and how they interacted with their surroundings. This information helps build a clearer picture of what the world was like during the Ice Age. The disappearance of many Ice Age giants is another important part of the story. Around the end of the last Ice Age, many of these large animals went extinct. This means they disappeared completely from the Earth. There are several possible reasons for this. One major factor is climate change. As the Ice Age ended, temperatures began to rise, glaciers melted, and environments changed. The conditions that once supported large animals were no longer the same. Another possible factor is human activity. Early humans lived during the later part of the Ice Age and may have hunted some of these large animals. Because these animals were big and often slow to reproduce, they may have been more vulnerable to overhunting. The combination of changing climates and human pressure may have led to the extinction of many Ice Age giants. Gigantism in the animal kingdom is a fascinating idea that captures the imagination in a very direct way. When people hear the word giant, they often think of creatures so large that they seem almost unreal, animals that tower over everything around them, dominate their environments, and leave a powerful impression simply because of their size. But in science, the idea of what counts as giant is more careful and more thoughtful than just calling something very big. It is not only about absolute size, but also about how large an animal is compared to others in its group, how it lives, how it grows, and how its size shapes its role in the natural world. To begin understanding gigantism, it is important to look at the idea of size itself. Size can be measured in different ways. Some animals are long, like snakes or whales. Others are tall, like giraffes. Some are massive and heavy, like elephants. Because of this, scientists do not rely on just one measurement. They may look at body length, height, weight, or even volume. For example, a creature might not be the longest, but it could still be considered giant because it is extremely heavy or has a very large body mass. This means that defining a giant is not always simple, and different animals can be called giant for different reasons. Another important idea is comparison. An animal is often called a giant when it is much larger than other animals that are closely related to it. This means that even a creature that might seem small to us can still be considered a giant within its own group. For instance, a beetle that is much larger than most other beetles can be seen as a giant beetle, even though it is tiny compared to a dog or a human. In this way, gigantism is not only about being large in a general sense, but about standing out within a specific category. Gigantism can also be understood as a biological condition or evolutionary trend. In some cases, it refers to a pattern where certain species evolve to become much larger over time. This often happens because being larger gives them some advantage. For example, a bigger body might help an animal survive in cold environments, avoid predators, or compete more successfully for food and mates. Over many generations, these advantages can lead to the development of truly enormous species. When we think about giants in the animal kingdom, one of the most striking places to look is the ocean. The marine world is home to some of the largest animals that have ever lived. Water supports weight in a way that land does not, which allows animals to grow much larger without the same physical limits. This is why many of the most famous giants are found in the sea. The largest animal known to have ever existed is the blue whale. This enormous marine mammal can grow to lengths that are difficult to fully understand without comparison. Its body can be longer than several large buses placed end to end, and its weight can be as much as dozens of large elephants combined. Despite its massive size, it feeds mostly on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill. This shows that gigantism does not always mean being a fierce predator. Sometimes it is linked to efficient feeding strategies, where an animal can consume large amounts of small food items. Another example of a marine giant is the whale shark. Unlike whales, which are mammals, the whale shark is a fish, and it holds the title of the largest fish in the ocean. It can grow to a length that rivals that of the largest whales, though it is usually lighter in weight. Like the blue whale, it feeds on small organisms, filtering them from the water as it swims. This shows a pattern where some of the largest creatures in the ocean rely on tiny food sources, using their size to process vast amounts of water. Giant squids are another fascinating example. These mysterious creatures live deep in the ocean, far from human view, and can grow to astonishing lengths. Their long tentacles stretch out like living ropes, helping them capture prey in the dark depths. Although they are not as heavy as whales or sharks, their length and unusual body shape make them stand out as giants in their own way. Moving away from the ocean and onto land, gigantism becomes more limited, but it is still very impressive. Land animals must deal with gravity in a much stronger way than marine animals. Their bodies need to support their full weight without the help of water, which places a natural limit on how large they can become. Even so, some land animals have reached remarkable sizes. The African elephant is the largest land animal living today. Its massive body, strong legs, and large ears make it one of the most recognizable giants on Earth. It uses its size as a form of protection, as few predators are willing to attack a fully grown elephant. Its trunk, which is both strong and flexible, allows it to perform many tasks, from lifting heavy objects to picking up small items. This combination of size and ability shows how gigantism can be tied to survival and adaptability. Giraffes are another example of land giants, though their greatness comes from height rather than weight. Their long necks allow them to reach leaves high in trees that other animals cannot access. This gives them a feeding advantage, especially in areas where food is limited. Their height also helps them spot predators from a distance, giving them more time to react and escape. In this case, gigantism is not about being heavy, but about being tall and having access to resources that others cannot reach. Rhinos and hippos also fall into the category of large terrestrial animals. Rhinos are known for their thick skin and powerful horns, while hippos are incredibly heavy and spend much of their time in water to support their weight. Both animals show how different environments can influence the way gigantism develops. Rhinos are built for life on land, with strong legs and a solid body, while hippos rely on water to help carry their massive bulk. Looking back into the past, the idea of gigantism becomes even more dramatic. During certain periods of Earth's history, especially the age of dinosaurs, some animals grew to sizes that are far beyond anything we see today. Long-necked dinosaurs could reach lengths that stretched across entire landscapes, while others were built like moving fortresses covered in armor and spikes. These prehistoric giants show that under the right conditions, life can produce creatures of truly astonishing scale. Gigantism is not limited to vertebrates, which are animals with backbones. Even among invertebrates, which lack backbones, there are examples of giant forms. Some insects, for instance, were much larger in the distant past than they are today. Giant dragonflies once flew through ancient skies with wingspans that were much larger than those of modern insects. This suggests that environmental factors, such as the amount of oxygen in the air, can influence how large certain types of animals can grow. In addition to natural gigantism, There are also cases where individuals within a species grow unusually large due to specific conditions. This can happen because of genetics, diet, or environmental factors. However, these cases are different from true evolutionary gigantism, which occurs over many generations and affects entire species. Understanding what counts as giant also involves thinking about limits. There are physical and biological boundaries that prevent animals from growing endlessly larger. For example, as an animal becomes bigger, its bones must become stronger to support its weight. Its heart must work harder to pump blood throughout its body. Its metabolism must provide enough energy to sustain its size. At some point, these demands become too great, and growth must stop. This is why even the largest animals have limits to how big they can become. Another important factor is the environment. In cold climates, some animals tend to grow larger, a pattern often explained by the idea that a bigger body retains heat more effectively. This is sometimes called Bergmann's rule. Larger animals have a smaller surface area compared to their volume, which helps them conserve heat. This is one reason why some of the largest mammals are found in colder regions or in the ocean, where temperatures can be very low. On islands, however, the opposite trend can sometimes occur. In these isolated environments, large animals may evolve to become smaller, while small animals may become larger. This process is known as island gigantism or island dwarfism, depending on the direction of change. It shows that gigantism is not a fixed rule, but a flexible response to different ecological conditions. The idea of gigantism also connects to how animals interact with their ecosystems. Large animals often play important roles in shaping their environments. For example, elephants can knock down trees, creating open spaces that benefit other species. Whales can influence ocean ecosystems by moving nutrients through the water. In this way, giants are not just impressive in size, they are also key players in the balance of nature. It is also worth noting that being a giant comes with both advantages and challenges. Larger animals may have fewer predators and greater strength, but they also require more food and more space. They may reproduce more slowly and have fewer offspring, which can make them more vulnerable to changes in the environment. This balance between benefit and risk is an important part of understanding why gigantism evolves in some cases but not in others. In modern times, human activity has had a strong impact on many of the world's largest animals. Hunting, habitat loss, and climate change have placed pressure on these giants, leading to declines in their populations. This highlights the importance of conservation efforts to protect these remarkable creatures and ensure that they continue to exist for future generations. Gigantism in the animal kingdom is therefore a rich and complex idea. It is not just about being big, but about how size is measured, how it compares within groups, how it evolves, and how it affects survival. From the deep oceans to the wide savannas, from ancient times to the present day, giant animals have captured attention and played vital roles in the story of life on Earth. When we think about what counts as giant, we begin to see that it is a concept shaped by context, comparison, and biology. Whether it is the immense weight of a whale, the towering height of a giraffe, or the surprising size of a beetle among its peers, gigantism takes many forms. Each example tells a story about how life adapts, grows, and pushes the boundaries of what is possible. The Pleistocene epoch was a time in Earth's history when cold dominated both land and sea, shaping the planet in ways that still affect us today. This long period, which began about 2,600,000 years ago and ended around 11,700 years ago, was marked by repeated cycles of freezing cold and slightly warmer conditions. During these cycles, enormous sheets of ice expanded across large parts of the continents and then slowly retreated, only to grow again. These changes were not small or gentle. They were massive shifts that transformed entire regions, influenced ocean levels, and affected how animals and plants lived, moved, and survived. At the heart of this period was a simple but powerful combination: cold air above and cold water below. The atmosphere cooled as global temperatures dropped, and this cooling allowed snow to fall and remain on the ground year after year. Instead of melting away during summer, the snow piled up, becoming thicker and heavier until it formed ice sheets that spread outward like slow-moving rivers of frozen rock. At the same time, the oceans also cooled. Cold water behaves differently from warm water. It is denser, meaning it sinks more easily and helps drive deep ocean currents that move heat around the globe. When the oceans cooled during the Pleistocene, these currents changed, and this had a strong effect on the climate everywhere. Cold air played a major role in shaping life on land. In many parts of the world, especially in the higher latitudes, temperatures were far lower than what we experience today. Winters were long and harsh, and summers were short and cool. The growing season, which is the time when plants can grow and reproduce, became very limited. This forced plants to adapt in clever ways. Some became low and tough, hugging the ground to avoid strong winds and to retain warmth. Others developed the ability to grow quickly during the brief summer and then survive the long winter in a dormant state. Animals, too, had to adjust to these conditions. The cold air made it difficult to maintain body heat. So many animals evolved thick fur, layers of fat, and large body sizes that helped them retain warmth. This is one of the reasons why the Ice Age is famous for its giant animals, such as woolly mammoths and giant deer. Larger bodies lose heat more slowly than smaller ones, which made size an advantage in such a cold world. The air itself could be dry in some regions, especially in areas far from the oceans, because cold air holds less moisture. This created vast, dry grasslands known as steppe tundra, where grasses and small plants dominated instead of forests. Cold water, on the other hand, had its own set of effects, especially in the oceans. As the temperature of the sea dropped, the behavior of marine ecosystems changed. Cold water can hold more dissolved oxygen than warm water, which can be beneficial for many forms of life. However, it also slows down the metabolism of organisms, meaning that growth and reproduction can take longer. In some areas, nutrient-rich cold waters rose from the deep ocean to the surface, supporting large populations of plankton. These tiny organisms formed the base of the marine food chain, feeding fish, which in turn fed larger predators. The expansion of ice sheets had a direct impact on sea levels. When water freezes into ice and is stored on land, it is no longer part of the ocean. During the coldest periods of the Pleistocene, sea levels dropped by as much as 120 meters. This exposed vast areas of land that are now underwater. Land bridges formed between continents, allowing animals and even early humans to migrate to new regions. One well-known example is the land bridge that once connected Asia and North America, enabling the movement of species between the two continents. The difference between polar and temperate ecosystems during this time was striking. Polar regions, which include areas near the North and South poles, were extremely cold and often covered by thick ice sheets. These regions had very limited plant life, mostly consisting of mosses, lichens, and a few hardy grasses. The growing season was extremely short, and the sun would disappear for long periods during winter. Animals living in these regions had to be highly specialized. Many were adapted to life on ice or in freezing water, with features like thick insulating fur, layers of blubber, and behaviors that helped them conserve energy. Temperate regions, which are located between the polar areas and the tropics, experienced more variation. While they were still much colder than today, they were not completely covered in ice. Instead, these regions saw a mix of environments, including grasslands, open woodlands, and patches of forest. The climate in these areas could change significantly over time, shifting between colder and slightly warmer phases. This created a dynamic environment where plants and animals had to be flexible and able to adapt to changing conditions. In temperate ecosystems, the presence of cold air did not always mean constant freezing. There were seasons, and during the warmer months, plants could grow and animals could feed and reproduce. However, the overall cooler climate meant that forests were less dense in many areas, and grasslands often spread over large regions. These grasslands supported herds of grazing animals, which in turn supported predators. The interactions between species in these ecosystems were complex and constantly changing as the climate shifted. One of the most important differences between polar and temperate ecosystems during the Pleistocene was the level of biodiversity. Polar regions, with their extreme conditions, supported fewer species. Only those that were highly adapted to the cold could survive there. In contrast, temperate regions supported a wider range of life. Although still challenging, these environments offered more opportunities for different species to find food and shelter. The movement of air and water during the Pleistocene also played a key role in shaping these ecosystems. Cold air masses would move from the polar regions toward lower latitudes, bringing cooler temperatures with them. At the same time, ocean currents redistributed heat around the planet. Changes in these patterns could lead to shifts in climate that affected large areas. For example, if a major ocean current slowed down or changed direction, it could make a region much colder or drier than before. Glaciers, which are large, slow-moving bodies of ice, were another defining feature of this time. As they advanced, they scraped across the land, carving out valleys and reshaping the landscape. They also carried rocks and debris, depositing them in new locations as the ice melted. This process created many of the landforms we see today, such as valleys, lakes, and ridges. When glaciers retreated, they left behind a landscape that was often barren and required time for plants and animals to recolonize. The presence of so much ice also affected the Earth's reflectivity, or albedo. Ice and snow reflect a large amount of sunlight back into space, which helps keep the planet cool. During the Pleistocene, the extensive ice cover increased this effect, reinforcing the cold conditions. This created a kind of feedback loop where cold temperatures led to more ice, and more ice led to even colder temperatures. Despite the harsh conditions, life during the Pleistocene was not static. It was a time of constant change and adaptation. Species evolved new traits to survive, migrated to new areas, or went extinct if they could not cope with the changing environment. The interplay between cold air and cold water created a complex and ever-changing world that tested the limits of life. The end of the Pleistocene brought significant changes. As global temperatures began to rise, ice sheets started to melt, and sea levels rose again. This marked the beginning of the current epoch, known as the Holocene. The warming climate led to the expansion of forests, the retreat of grasslands in some areas, and the disappearance of many large Ice Age animals. However, the legacy of the Pleistocene remains visible in the landscapes around us and in the adaptations of the species that survived. The combination of cold air and cold water shaped the Earth in profound ways, influencing everything from the movement of continents to the evolution of life. By studying this period, we gain insight into how climate systems work and how they can change over time. This knowledge is especially important today, as we face our own challenges related to climate change and environmental shifts. The contrast between polar and temperate ecosystems during the Pleistocene highlights the diversity of life and the many ways in which organisms can adapt to their surroundings. From the icy deserts of the polar regions to the grassy plains of the temperate zones, each environment had its own unique challenges and opportunities. Together, they formed a complex and interconnected system that was shaped by the constant interplay of cold air and cold water. Bergmann's rule is one of those fascinating ideas in science that seems simple at first, yet opens the door to a much deeper understanding of how life adapts to the world around it. At its heart, the rule explains a pattern that scientists have noticed again and again in nature. Animals that live in colder environments tend to have larger bodies, while those living in warmer places are often smaller. This is not just a coincidence or a random trend. It is a powerful example of how living things respond to temperature, survival challenges, and the need to conserve or release heat. To truly understand this idea, it helps to begin with something very basic. All animals must deal with heat. Whether it is the blazing sun of a desert or the freezing winds of an ice-covered plain, temperature plays a huge role in how animals live, grow, and survive. Warm-blooded animals, also known as endotherms, such as mammals and birds, generate their own heat inside their bodies. This allows them to remain active even in cold conditions, but it also means they must carefully manage how much heat they keep and how much they lose. This is where the idea behind Bergmann's rule becomes very important. Larger bodies have a smaller surface area compared to their volume, while smaller bodies have a larger surface area compared to their volume. This might sound a bit technical at first, but it can be understood with a simple comparison. Imagine two blocks of ice, one large and one small. The smaller one melts faster because more of its surface is exposed to the surrounding air relative to its size. The larger block, even though it has more total surface area, loses heat more slowly compared to its overall mass. The same idea applies to animals. A large animal has less surface area relative to its body volume, which means it loses heat more slowly. This is extremely useful in cold environments where keeping warmth inside the body can mean the difference between life and death. On the other hand, a small animal has more surface area relative to its size, so it loses heat quickly. In hot environments, this can actually be helpful because it allows excess heat to escape more easily. Because of this, natural selection tends to favor larger body sizes in colder climates and smaller body sizes in warmer ones. Over many generations, this leads to clear patterns in the sizes of animals living in different parts of the world. This is the core idea behind Bergmann's rule, and it has been observed in many different species across the planet. When we look at the distant past, especially the time known as the Ice Age, this rule becomes even more striking. The Ice Age, which lasted for tens of thousands of years, was a period when much of the Earth was colder than it is today. Massive ice sheets covered large parts of the northern continents, and temperatures were much lower across vast regions. In these harsh conditions, survival was not easy. Food could be scarce, winters were long and brutal, and animals had to be well adapted to the cold if they were to survive. During this time, many animals grew to enormous sizes compared to their modern relatives. These creatures are often called Ice Age giants, and they provide some of the clearest examples of Bergmann's rule in action. Animals such as the woolly mammoth, the giant ground sloth, and the woolly rhinoceros were not just large by chance. Their size was part of their survival strategy. Take the woolly mammoth as an example. This massive animal lived in some of the coldest regions of the Ice Age world. Its large body helped it retain heat, while its thick fur and layers of fat provided additional insulation. Compared to modern elephants, which live in warmer climates, the woolly mammoth was better suited to freezing temperatures. Its size was not just impressive, it was essential. The same pattern can be seen in other Ice Age animals. Many species of deer, bison, and even predators like saber-toothed cats were larger than their modern relatives. This increase in size helped them conserve heat and survive in environments where temperatures could drop far below freezing. In a world where staying warm was a constant challenge, being bigger offered a clear advantage. However, the story is not just about size alone. Body shape also plays an important role. Animals in cold climates often have shorter limbs, ears, and tails compared to those in warmer regions. This reduces the amount of surface area exposed to the cold and helps prevent heat loss. In contrast, animals in hot climates often have longer limbs and larger ears, which help them release heat more effectively. This related idea is sometimes known as Allen's rule, and it works alongside Bergmann's rule to shape the bodies of animals in different environments. In the Ice Age, these adaptations combined to create creatures that were perfectly suited to their world. Imagine a vast, frozen landscape with icy winds sweeping across open plains. In such a place, an animal with a small body and thin fur would quickly lose heat and struggle to survive. But a large animal with a thick coat and a compact shape would have a much better chance. Over time, natural selection would favor these larger, better insulated individuals, leading to populations that were bigger and more cold-resistant. It is important to understand that Bergmann's rule is not a strict law that applies in every single case. Nature is always complex, and there are exceptions. Some animals do not follow this pattern exactly, and other factors such as food availability, predators, and habitat can also influence body size. For example, if food is scarce, it may not be possible for animals to grow very large, even in cold environments. Similarly, smaller size might sometimes offer advantages in terms of speed, agility, or the ability to hide from predators. Despite these exceptions, the overall pattern described by Bergmann's rule is strong and widely observed. It provides a useful framework for understanding why animals look the way they do and how they have adapted to their environments over long periods of time. When scientists study fossils from the Ice Age, they often use ideas like Bergmann's rule to help interpret what they find. By examining the size and shape of ancient animals, researchers can make educated guesses about the climates in which they lived. Large, heavy-bodied animals, with features suited for conserving heat, suggest cold environments, while smaller, more slender animals may indicate warmer conditions. This approach helps scientists piece together a picture of the past, allowing them to understand not just individual species, but entire ecosystems. The Ice Age was not just a time of cold temperatures. It was a dynamic period with shifting climates, changing landscapes, and evolving life forms. Bergmann's rule is one of the tools that helps us make sense of this complex history. Another interesting aspect of this rule is how it connects to modern animals. Even today, we can see similar patterns in species that live across different regions. For example, populations of the same species may be larger in colder northern areas and smaller in warmer southern areas. This shows that the processes described by Bergmann's rule are still at work, shaping life on Earth in real time. Understanding this rule also helps us think about the future. As the global climate changes, the environments in which animals live are also changing. Temperatures are rising in many parts of the world, and this could affect the sizes and shapes of animals over time. If warmer conditions become more common, we might expect to see trends towards smaller body sizes in some species, as the need to conserve heat becomes less important. However, changes like these do not happen overnight. Evolution takes time, often many generations, and is influenced by many different factors. The Ice Age offers a powerful example of how these processes can shape the natural world. It was a time when cold conditions dominated large parts of the planet, and animals responded in ways that allowed them to survive and even thrive. Their large sizes, thick coverings, and compact shapes were not random features. They were the result of countless generations of adaptation. When we look at these ancient giants, it is easy to be amazed by their size and strength. But their true significance lies in what they teach us about the relationship between life and climate. Bergmann's rule helps us see that size is not just a matter of chance or growth, but a reflection of deeper biological and environmental forces. It also highlights the importance of energy. In cold environments, conserving heat means conserving energy, and this can make a huge difference in survival. A larger animal, by losing heat more slowly, does not need to produce as much heat to stay warm. This can save energy that can then be used for finding food, reproducing, or avoiding predators. In this way, size becomes part of a larger strategy for living in a challenging world. At the same time, being large also comes with costs. Bigger animals need more food, and in the harsh conditions of the Ice Age, finding enough to eat could be difficult. This means that there was a balance between the benefits of being large and the challenges that came with it. Natural selection would favor sizes that offered the best overall advantage, taking into account both the need to conserve heat and the need to survive in a resource-limited environment. This balance is part of what makes the study of Bergmann's rule so interesting. It is not just about one factor, but about how multiple pressures come together to shape life. Temperature, food, predators, and many other influences all play a role, and the final result is the incredible diversity of forms we see in both the past and the present. Cold oceans may look quiet and lifeless from the surface, but beneath that calm and often icy appearance lies a world bursting with activity, growth, and constant feeding. These waters hold an incredible supply of nutrients, and this hidden richness supports vast communities of living things. From tiny drifting organisms to enormous marine animals, life in cold water ecosystems depends on the steady availability of food, and this abundance plays a major role in shaping how large many of these creatures can grow. In many cold regions of the world, especially near the poles and along certain coastlines, the water is constantly moving. Winds push the surface layers aside, and this allows deeper water to rise toward the top in a process often called upwelling. The water that comes up from below is not empty. Instead, it is filled with nutrients that have built up over long periods of time. These nutrients come from decaying plants and animals that have sunk into the deep ocean, where they break down slowly and release valuable elements back into the water. When this nutrient-rich water reaches the surface, something remarkable happens. Sunlight, even if it is weaker in colder regions, shines on the surface layers and provides energy. This energy allows phytoplankton, which are tiny plant-like organisms, to grow rapidly. Phytoplankton use sunlight and nutrients to create food through a process similar to what plants do on land. Even though each individual phytoplankton is extremely small, together they form massive populations that can stretch across large areas of the ocean. This explosion of phytoplankton is often called a bloom. In cold water regions, these blooms can be especially powerful because the nutrients are so plentiful. The water acts almost like a well-stocked pantry, constantly supplying what phytoplankton need to multiply. As they grow and spread, they become the foundation of the entire food chain. Everything else in the ecosystem depends on them, directly or indirectly. The next level of life in this system includes small animals known as zooplankton. These creatures drift through the water and feed on phytoplankton. Zooplankton include tiny crustaceans, larval fish, and many other small organisms. They may be small, but they exist in enormous numbers. In cold waters, where phytoplankton are abundant, zooplankton populations can grow very quickly. This creates a rich source of food for larger animals. Fish, squid, and other medium-sized predators rely heavily on zooplankton. They feed constantly, taking advantage of the large supply of small prey. Because food is so easy to find, these animals can spend less time searching and more time growing. Over time, this steady access to nutrition allows them to reach larger sizes than they might in environments where food is scarce. Above them in the food chain are even larger predators, including seals, seabirds, and large fish. These animals benefit from the same pattern. Because the lower levels of the food chain are so productive, there is always something to eat. This abundance reduces competition and increases survival rates, allowing more individuals to grow to maturity and reach impressive sizes. Perhaps the most striking examples of this pattern can be seen in the largest animals on Earth, such as whales. Many of these giants spend much of their time in cold waters, where food is plentiful. Some species feed on krill, which are small shrimp-like creatures that form massive swarms in nutrient-rich oceans. A single whale can consume huge quantities of krill each day, made possible only because these tiny animals exist in such large numbers. The connection between food abundance and body size is not difficult to understand. Growing large requires energy, and energy comes from food. In environments where food is limited, animals must compete more intensely, and many may not get enough to grow to their full potential. In contrast, in places where food is abundant, animals can eat more regularly and in greater amounts. This steady intake of energy supports growth, reproduction, and long-term survival. Cold water ecosystems provide this advantage in a very reliable way. The constant mixing of water layers ensures that nutrients are regularly brought to the surface. Seasonal changes, such as the return of sunlight after long winters in polar regions, can trigger sudden and massive increases in productivity. During these periods, the ocean becomes a feeding ground for countless species. Another important factor is that cold water can hold more dissolved gases, including oxygen, than warm water. This higher oxygen content supports active lifestyles and efficient metabolism in many marine animals. With both abundant food and sufficient oxygen, organisms are well equipped to grow larger and maintain their size. It is also worth noting that colder temperatures can slow down the metabolism of some organisms. This means they use energy more slowly, allowing them to make better use of the food they consume. When combined with an abundant food supply, this can lead to steady, long-term growth. Over time, this contributes to the presence of large-bodied species in these environments. The structure of the food web in cold waters is often simple but extremely productive. Because energy flows efficiently from phytoplankton to zooplankton and then to larger animals, there is less waste along the way. Each level of the food chain supports the next with remarkable effectiveness. This efficiency helps sustain large populations and, in turn, supports larger body sizes. In some regions, such as the waters surrounding Antarctica, this pattern is especially clear. During certain times of the year, phytoplankton blooms become so dense that they can be seen from space. These blooms feed vast swarms of krill, which then support whales, seals, and seabirds. The entire system is built on the foundation of nutrient-rich cold water, and it demonstrates how powerful this process can be. Cold coastal waters also show similar patterns. Along certain shorelines, winds and currents bring deep, nutrient-rich water to the surface. These areas become some of the most productive fishing grounds in the world. Fish populations thrive, and the abundance of food supports both marine life and human communities that depend on these resources. The relationship between food abundance and body size is not limited to a single species or group. It appears again and again across different types of organisms. Larger fish, bigger marine mammals, and even certain invertebrates all benefit from the same underlying principle. When food is easy to find and plentiful, growth becomes less restricted. However, this balance depends on the health of the ecosystem. Changes in temperature, pollution, or overfishing can disrupt the flow of nutrients and reduce productivity. If the supply of phytoplankton decreases, the entire food chain can be affected. This can lead to smaller populations, and in some cases, smaller body sizes over time. Despite these challenges, Cold water ecosystems remain some of the most important and dynamic environments on Earth. Their ability to support large and diverse communities of life is closely tied to the abundance of nutrients and the constant renewal of these resources. This ongoing cycle ensures that food is available at every level of the food chain. The idea that cold environments can be so rich in life may seem surprising at first, but it highlights the importance of looking beyond surface conditions. While warmth and sunlight are often associated with growth and abundance on land, the ocean follows different rules. In the sea, it is the movement of water and the recycling of nutrients that play the most important roles. Over long periods of time, these processes have shaped the evolution of marine life. Species that live in cold, nutrient-rich waters have adapted to take full advantage of the available food. Many have developed feeding strategies that allow them to capture large amounts of prey quickly and efficiently. Others have grown larger bodies that help them store energy and survive during times when food is less abundant. Metabolism and heat retention are deeply connected to the size of an animal's body, and this relationship has shaped the way living things grow, survive, and adapt in different environments across the Earth. To understand this connection in a clear and simple way, it helps to begin with a basic idea. Every living creature produces heat as a result of being alive. This heat comes from metabolism, which is the process by which the body converts food into energy. That energy is used to move, grow, repair tissues, and carry out all the invisible work that keeps an organism alive. But at the same time, as animals produce heat, they also lose it to the surrounding environment. The balance between producing heat and losing heat is one of the most important challenges any animal faces. The size of an animal plays a major role in how this balance works. Larger animals and smaller animals experience heat very differently, even if they live in the same place. This difference can be understood by looking at two simple features of any body: its volume and its surface area. Volume refers to how much space the body takes up, while surface area refers to how much of the body is exposed to the outside environment. Heat is produced throughout the volume of the body because all cells carry out metabolic processes. However, heat is mostly lost through the surface of the body, where it comes into contact with air, water, or other surroundings. This creates an important pattern. As an animal grows larger, its volume increases much faster than its surface area. In simple terms, a big animal has much more internal space compared to the amount of surface it has on the outside. This means it can produce a large amount of heat, but loses it more slowly. On the other hand, a small animal has a relatively large surface compared to its volume. This means it loses heat quickly, even though it produces less heat overall. Because of this difference, larger animals are naturally better at conserving heat. Their bodies act like thick, well-insulated containers that hold warmth inside. Smaller animals, however, are more like thin containers that allow heat to escape easily. This is why small animals often need to eat more frequently and have faster metabolisms. They burn energy quickly to replace the heat they are constantly losing. Larger animals do not need to work as hard to stay warm because their bodies already help them keep the heat they produce. To understand this more deeply, imagine two animals living in a cold environment. One is very small, like a mouse, and the other is very large, like an elephant. The mouse has a high surface area compared to its volume, so heat escapes from its body very quickly. To survive, it must constantly generate heat through rapid metabolism. This means it must eat often and remain active. If it stops moving or cannot find food, it risks losing heat faster than it can produce it, which can be dangerous. The elephant, on the other hand, has a massive body with a much smaller surface area relative to its volume. It produces a large amount of heat, but that heat is not lost quickly. Its thick body helps it retain warmth, even in cooler conditions. Because of this, it does not need to maintain such a fast metabolism to stay warm. It can survive longer without food compared to the mouse and does not lose heat as rapidly. This simple comparison shows why body size is so important in determining how animals manage heat. It also explains why certain sizes are more common in certain environments. In colder regions, larger animals tend to have an advantage because they can conserve heat more effectively. In warmer regions, smaller animals may have an advantage because they can lose heat more easily and avoid overheating. The reason bigger animals lose heat more slowly can be explored even further by thinking about how heat moves. Heat always flows from warmer areas to cooler areas. Inside an animal's body, the core is usually warmer than the surface. Heat moves from the core to the skin, and then from the skin to the surrounding environment. In larger animals, the distance between the core and the surface is greater. This means it takes longer for heat to travel from the inside of the body to the outside. This extra distance acts like a barrier, slowing down the loss of heat. In addition to this, larger animals often have thicker layers of tissue, fat, or fur, which provide extra insulation. These layers trap heat and prevent it from escaping quickly. Even without these features, the basic structure of a large body already helps to reduce heat loss. The combination of a lower surface area relative to volume, greater internal distance, and possible insulating layers all work together to help larger animals retain heat. Smaller animals, by contrast, have very little distance between their core and their surface. Heat can quickly travel from the inside of their bodies to the outside. Their thin bodies do not provide much insulation, and their large surface area allows heat to escape rapidly. This is why many small animals have evolved special behaviors or features to cope with heat loss. For example, they may have thick fur, huddle together with others, or remain active to generate more heat. Another important aspect of metabolism is how quickly it operates in animals of different sizes. Smaller animals tend to have faster metabolisms. This means their bodies process energy more quickly, producing heat at a higher rate. This rapid metabolism is necessary to make up for the heat they lose. Larger animals, on the other hand, usually have slower metabolisms relative to their size. They do not need to produce as much heat per unit of body mass because they lose heat more slowly. This difference in metabolism also affects many other aspects of an animal's life. Small animals often have faster heart rates, breathe more quickly, and consume more food relative to their body size. Their lives can feel like a constant race to maintain energy and warmth. Larger animals tend to have slower heart rates, slower breathing, and lower energy demands relative to their size. Their lives may appear more steady and less rushed, at least in terms of energy use. The relationship between body size and heat retention is not just important for survival in cold environments. It also plays a role in how animals deal with heat in warmer climates. In hot environments, losing heat can be just as important as conserving it. Animals must prevent their bodies from becoming too hot, which can be dangerous. In these conditions, having a smaller body or features that increase heat loss can be beneficial. For example, animals in hot regions may have large ears, long limbs, or other features that increase their surface area. These features allow more heat to escape, helping to keep the body cool. In contrast, animals in cold regions often have shorter limbs and more compact bodies, which reduce surface area and help retain heat. These patterns show how body shape and size are closely linked to temperature and survival. Water environments add another layer to this discussion. Water conducts heat away from the body much faster than air. This means animals living in cold water face an even greater challenge in retaining heat. In such environments, being large can be a major advantage. Large marine animals, such as whales, have massive bodies that help them conserve heat. They also often have thick layers of fat, known as blubber, which provide additional insulation. Smaller aquatic animals, on the other hand, may struggle more with heat loss. They often rely on different strategies, such as staying active or living in slightly warmer waters. The difference in heat retention between large and small bodies becomes even more important in water because of how quickly heat can be lost. It is also interesting to consider how this relationship has influenced the evolution of animals over long periods of time. In colder periods of Earth's history, larger body sizes may have been favored because they helped animals survive low temperatures. Over many generations, species that were better at conserving heat may have been more likely to survive and reproduce. This could lead to the development of larger average body sizes in certain groups of animals. At the same time, in warmer periods or regions, smaller body sizes may have been favored because they allowed animals to lose heat more easily. This shows that body size is not just a random feature, but something that can be shaped by the environment and the need to manage heat effectively. The idea that bigger animals lose heat more slowly is not just a simple observation. It is a fundamental principle that helps explain many patterns in nature. It influences where animals live, how they behave, how they eat, and even how they evolve over time. It connects the physical structure of the body with the invisible processes of metabolism and energy use. Another way to think about this is to imagine the body as a kind of heat bank. Larger animals have a bigger bank, where heat can be stored. They can hold on to warmth for longer periods, even if the environment is cold. Smaller animals have a much smaller bank, so they must constantly deposit new heat through metabolism to keep their balance. This concept also helps explain why some animals enter states like hibernation or torpor. During these states, metabolism slows down and the body temperature drops. For small animals, this can be a way to conserve energy when food is scarce, even though it means they are not actively producing as much heat. Larger animals may also use similar strategies, but their greater ability to retain heat can make these states less extreme or necessary. The connection between metabolism, body size, and heat retention is a powerful example of how simple physical principles can shape the living world. It shows that biology is not separate from physics, but deeply connected to it. The way heat moves, the way energy is used, and the way bodies are built all come together to determine how animals survive and thrive. In everyday life, we can even see small hints of this principle. For example, a cup of hot tea cools down faster than a large pot of soup. The smaller volume and relatively larger surface area of the cup allow heat to escape more quickly. The same basic idea applies to animals, though in a much more complex and fascinating way. From tiny insects to massive mammals, each organism has found its own way to deal with the challenge of heat. Some rely on speed and constant energy use, while others rely on size and insulation. Each strategy has its own advantages and limitations, shaped by the environment and the demands of survival. Oxygen is one of the most important elements for life, yet it is something many people rarely think about in detail. Every breath taken by animals on land and every movement made by creatures in the water depends on oxygen. It is the invisible fuel that powers cells, allowing them to release energy from food and keep living systems running. Without enough oxygen, life slows down, weakens, and eventually stops. But when oxygen is abundant, something remarkable can happen. Growth becomes easier, bodies can become larger, and entire ecosystems can support animals of impressive size. This connection between oxygen and size becomes especially interesting when we look at cold water environments, where oxygen levels are naturally higher and where some of the largest aquatic creatures in history have lived. Cold water has a special ability that warm water does not have to the same extent. It can hold more dissolved oxygen. This is a simple physical fact, but its effects are far-reaching and powerful. When water is cold, the molecules move more slowly. This slower movement allows gases like oxygen to remain dissolved in the water more easily. In contrast, warm water molecules move faster and tend to release gases into the air more quickly. This means that, all else being equal, colder oceans, lakes, and rivers are richer in oxygen than warmer ones. This difference may seem small at first, but for aquatic animals, it can shape the entire structure of life. Oxygen in water is not as easy to access as oxygen in air. Air is full of oxygen, and land animals can breathe it directly into their lungs. Water, however, contains much less oxygen by volume, and aquatic animals must work harder to extract it. Fish, for example, use gills to pull oxygen from the water as it flows over them. This process is efficient, but it still limits how much oxygen they can take in at any moment. Because of this limitation, the amount of oxygen available in the water becomes a key factor in determining how large an aquatic animal can grow. In cold water, where oxygen is more abundant, animals have an advantage. Their bodies can receive more oxygen with each breath or with each movement of water across their gills. This extra supply supports higher levels of activity and allows their cells to produce more energy. With more energy available, growth becomes easier. Cells can divide more often, tissues can expand, and bodies can increase in size without running into the same limitations that might exist in oxygen-poor environments. This is one of the reasons why some of the largest animals on Earth are found in cold or temperate waters. The oceans of higher latitudes, where temperatures are lower, are often rich in oxygen and nutrients. These conditions create an environment where large body sizes are not only possible, but sometimes favored. Larger bodies can store more energy, travel longer distances, and survive longer periods without food. When oxygen is plentiful, the cost of maintaining a large body is reduced, making gigantism a more viable strategy for survival. Gigantism, in simple terms, refers to the tendency of some animals to grow to very large sizes compared to others in their group. It is not just about being big for the sake of it. Large size can offer many advantages. Bigger animals often have fewer predators, as there are fewer creatures capable of attacking them. They can also move more efficiently through water, as larger bodies can reduce the relative impact of drag. In addition, large size can help with temperature regulation, especially in cold environments, as bigger bodies lose heat more slowly than smaller ones. However, growing large also comes with challenges. A bigger body needs more energy to sustain itself. It needs more food, more oxygen, and more resources overall. If any of these are limited, growth will eventually stop. This is where the importance of oxygen becomes clear. In an environment where oxygen is scarce, there is a natural limit to how large an animal can become. Its body simply cannot get enough oxygen to support further growth. But in cold, oxygen-rich water, this limit is pushed higher, allowing animals to reach sizes that would not be possible elsewhere. The relationship between oxygen and growth can be understood by looking at how cells use oxygen. Inside every living cell, there are tiny structures that produce energy. These structures rely on oxygen to break down nutrients and release energy in a process often referred to as cellular respiration. The more oxygen available, the more energy can be produced. This energy is then used for everything the organism does, from moving and feeding to growing and reproducing. When an animal is small, its surface area relative to its volume is high. This means that oxygen can reach its cells relatively easily. But as the animal grows larger, its volume increases faster than its surface area. This creates a challenge. Oxygen must travel longer distances within the body to reach all the cells, and the demand for oxygen increases. If the supply cannot keep up with this demand, growth will slow down or stop. In cold water environments, the higher availability of oxygen helps to overcome this challenge. Even as animals grow larger, they can still access enough oxygen to support their increased needs. This allows them to continue growing beyond the limits that might exist in warmer, less oxygen-rich waters. Over time, this can lead to the evolution of species that are much larger than their relatives in other environments. This pattern has been observed in many different groups of aquatic animals. Certain species of fish, crustaceans, and even microscopic organisms tend to be larger in colder waters. This is sometimes referred to as a form of environmental influence on body size. While other factors also play a role, such as food availability and predation, oxygen levels are a key part of the explanation. It is also important to consider how cold water ecosystems are often rich in nutrients. In many parts of the world, cold waters are stirred by currents that bring nutrients from the deep up to the surface. These nutrients support the growth of tiny plant-like organisms that form the base of the food chain. These organisms, in turn, support larger animals, creating a system where energy flows upward and supports life at many levels. When high nutrient levels are combined with high oxygen levels, the result is a powerful environment for growth. Animals not only have enough oxygen to support large bodies, but they also have access to the food needed to fuel that growth. This combination can lead to ecosystems where large animals are common and where gigantism becomes a natural outcome. Another interesting aspect of cold water is how it affects metabolism. In general, colder temperatures tend to slow down metabolic processes. This means that animals in cold environments often use energy more slowly than those in warm environments. At first, this might seem like a disadvantage, but it can actually be beneficial for growth. When metabolism is slower, energy can be used more efficiently and less is wasted as heat. Combined with high oxygen availability, this can create conditions where growth is steady and sustained over long periods. This slow and steady growth can lead to larger final body sizes. Instead of growing quickly and reaching a limit early, animals in cold water can continue growing over a longer time. This extended growth period allows them to reach sizes that might not be possible in warmer environments, where faster metabolism and lower oxygen levels create stricter limits. The connection between oxygen and gigantism is not limited to modern ecosystems. It has also played a role in the history of life on Earth. There have been periods in the past when oxygen levels in the atmosphere and oceans were much higher than they are today. During some of these times, certain groups of animals reached enormous sizes. While many factors were involved, High oxygen levels are believed to have been one of the key drivers. Even today, variations in oxygen levels can influence the size of animals in different regions. In areas where water becomes warmer and oxygen levels drop, animals may struggle to grow as large as they once did. This is a growing concern in the modern world, as climate change leads to rising temperatures in many parts of the ocean. As waters warm, their ability to hold oxygen decreases, potentially limiting the growth of aquatic animals and altering entire ecosystems. This change can have wide-reaching effects. Smaller body sizes can mean different feeding patterns, different predator-prey relationships, and changes in how energy moves through the ecosystem. Over time, this can reshape the balance of life in the water, affecting not only individual species, but entire communities. Despite these challenges, the basic relationship between cold water, oxygen, and growth remains clear. Cold water provides a rich supply of oxygen, which supports the energy needs of living organisms. This, in turn, allows for greater growth potential, making it possible for some animals to reach impressive sizes. When combined with other favorable conditions, such as abundant food and stable environments, this can lead to the development of giant forms that capture the imagination and reveal the incredible possibilities of life. The Ice Age was a time of extraordinary extremes, not just in weather, but in the size and power of the creatures that lived during it. The land and oceans were filled with giants, many far larger than anything we see today. On land, the woolly mammoths stood as some of the most impressive animals of their time, while in the oceans, giant seals, whales, and massive fish species ruled the cold waters. The forces that drove these remarkable sizes were deeply tied to the environment, the availability of food, and the physical demands of surviving in a frigid world. Woolly mammoths were closely related to today's elephants, yet they were uniquely suited for life in harsh, frozen regions. They were covered in long, thick hair and a layer of fat that could be as much as 10 centimeters thick, keeping them insulated against temperatures that could drop well below -40 degrees Celsius in the winter. Their bodies were built not just for warmth, but also for strength, allowing them to push through snowdrifts and uproot frozen vegetation. Their tusks were enormous, sometimes reaching up to 5 meters in length, curving gracefully outward and upward. These tusks were more than just tools for survival. They were also used in social interactions, displays of dominance, and for defending against predators, such as the Ice Age's large cats and wolves. Modern elephants, by contrast, live in warmer climates. African elephants, for instance, can weigh up to 6,000 kilograms and reach heights of around 3.5 meters at the shoulder. They have large ears that act as natural air conditioners, releasing excess body heat. This contrasts sharply with woolly mammoths, which had smaller ears to minimize heat loss. The comparison between woolly mammoths and modern elephants illustrates how environment shapes an animal's size, body structure, and even behavior. In colder climates, larger, more compact bodies conserve heat more efficiently, a concept known as Bergmann's rule, which explains why Ice Age animals were often larger than their modern counterparts. The oceans of the Ice Age were home to some of the most astonishing marine giants ever known. Cold water holds more oxygen than warm water, and this higher oxygen content allowed aquatic animals to grow larger than they could in warmer seas. Among these giants were enormous seals, many species of which dwarfed the seals of today. Some Ice Age seals could weigh over 1,000 kilograms, with strong flippers capable of propelling them swiftly through the icy waters. Their size made them less vulnerable to predators and allowed them to store more fat, an essential energy reserve for surviving months of scarce food and freezing temperatures. Whales, too, reached staggering sizes during the Ice Age. Some species rivaled or even exceeded the largest whales alive today. The abundant cold water food sources, including vast schools of fish and swarms of plankton, provided the necessary nutrition to sustain their enormous bodies. Megafaunal whales were able to migrate over thousands of kilometers, following patterns of prey availability, and their massive size helped them travel long distances while conserving energy. Their enormous mouths and baleen plates allowed them to filter huge quantities of tiny organisms, efficiently turning the ocean's microscopic bounty into the fuel that supported their immense growth. Fish species of the Ice Age also included giants, some of which have no modern equivalent. Cold, nutrient-rich waters encouraged growth by providing plentiful food and by slowing metabolism in ways that favored larger body sizes. Fish like giant sturgeons, which could reach lengths of over 6 meters, were not uncommon. These enormous fish were slow-growing but long-lived, sometimes surviving for more than a century. Their large size protected them from many predators, allowed them to travel great distances, and enabled them to dominate their ecosystems as apex or near-apex species. The interplay between cold water, abundant food, and oxygen levels created conditions that were almost perfect for gigantism in marine animals. The cold oceans of the Ice Age were teeming with life, and this abundance of energy allowed species to reach sizes unimaginable in today's warmer, less oxygen-rich seas. For example, giant seals could feed on fish and smaller marine mammals, while enormous whales could filter feed on enormous swarms of plankton or hunt smaller whales and seals. Predators and prey alike were locked in an evolutionary arms race, where being bigger often meant being safer, more efficient, and more capable of surviving the harsh climate. Ice Age marine giants were not just physically impressive, they were also intricately adapted to their environment. Thick layers of blubber insulated them against freezing temperatures, while their large size allowed them to store energy during times of food abundance. Migration patterns were shaped by seasonal changes in prey availability, and social structures, particularly in species like whales, were complex and highly organized. These adaptations ensured survival over millennia, even as ice sheets expanded and contracted across the globe. Woolly mammoths and modern elephants also provide a striking example of how species adapt differently to climate and environment. While elephants thrive in warm savannas and forests, mammoths evolved to cope with extreme cold, often traveling long distances to find food beneath snow and ice. The size of their bodies, the curvature and length of their tusks, the density of their fur, and even the fat deposits on their backs were all shaped by the demands of the Ice Age world. Similarly, marine giants had to balance energy intake with energy use, storing fat to survive lean months and growing large enough to avoid predation while maintaining mobility in vast oceans. The fossil record offers glimpses into this extraordinary world of giants. Bones of mammoths, sometimes complete with tusks and skulls, have been found frozen in permafrost, revealing the incredible robustness of their bodies. In the oceans, fossilized teeth, vertebrae, and skulls of giant seals, whales, and massive fish have been uncovered, giving scientists clues about their size, diet, and behavior. Some of these fossils are tens of thousands of years old, providing evidence of how these animals lived, thrived, and eventually disappeared as climates changed and human activity began to influence ecosystems. The extinction of many Ice Age giants, including woolly mammoths, giant seals, and some species of enormous fish, was a result of a combination of factors. Climate warming at the end of the Pleistocene, around 11,700 years ago, transformed the landscapes and oceans that these animals depended upon. Ice sheets melted, altering sea levels and ocean currents, while warming temperatures reduced the oxygen content in the ocean slightly and shifted food sources. At the same time, human populations were spreading across continents, hunting these large animals for food, fur, and tools. The combination of environmental change and human pressure led to the gradual disappearance of these remarkable giants, leaving only their descendants, smaller or differently adapted, in today's world. Studying the woolly mammoth alongside modern elephants and giant Ice Age seals, whales, and fish alongside today's marine species allows scientists to understand the remarkable influence of environment on body size and survival strategies. It also highlights the importance of cold environments in fostering gigantism, both on land and in the oceans. The lessons from these ancient giants extend to modern ecology, conservation, and climate science. By understanding why animals grew so large during the Ice Age, scientists can better predict how current species might respond to changing temperatures, oxygen levels, and food availability in our rapidly warming world. In the oceans today, the legacy of Ice Age giants is still visible. Modern whales, such as blue whales, remain the largest animals to have ever lived, and giant fish like sturgeons continue to awe us with their size. On land, elephants still capture our imagination, though no modern species reaches the massive size or thick, insulating fur of the woolly mammoth. These Ice Age giants also illustrate a principle that resonates across all of biology, that body size is deeply influenced by environmental conditions. The massive bodies of woolly mammoths, the enormous blubber-covered seals, the colossal whales, and giant fish were not accidents of evolution. They were deliberate solutions to the challenges of cold, harsh climates. Each feature, from the curvature of a tusk to the thickness of a blubber layer, contributed to survival in a world of ice and snow. Even today, as climate change accelerates, understanding these adaptations provides critical context for conservation efforts, revealing the intricate dance between species and their environments. By reflecting on these magnificent Ice Age giants, we can appreciate the interplay between cold water, abundant food, high oxygen levels, and evolutionary pressures that shaped life in the Pleistocene epoch. The study of these Ice Age giants has also provided valuable insights into how modern species may respond to environmental changes. Just as the woolly mammoth evolved thick fur and massive bodies to survive the cold, marine animals today adjust their physiology, behavior, and migration patterns in response to shifts in temperature and food availability. The Pleistocene seas and tundra can thus be seen as natural laboratories, offering lessons on resilience, adaptation, and the remarkable capacity of life to thrive under challenging conditions. In every fossilized tusk, bone, tooth, and vertebra, there is a story of survival and adaptation. Woolly mammoths moving across frozen plains, giant seals hunting beneath ice-laden seas, whales filtering vast quantities of plankton, and massive fish swimming through frigid oceans. All these images testify to a time when life reached extraordinary dimensions. Even though the Ice Age giants no longer walk or swim among us, their legacy is preserved in the natural world, scientific research, and human imagination. Comparing them to modern elephants, whales, seals, and large fish allows us to see both continuity and change in evolution. While no present-day species matches the woolly mammoth in its combination of size, fur, and tusks, elephants continue to echo the past in their grandeur and social complexity. The Ice Age giants are not just relics of the past, they are benchmarks for understanding how life responds to environmental pressures. By studying their size, behavior, and ecological roles, scientists gain insights into evolutionary strategies, the effects of climate on growth, and the importance of oxygen and nutrition in supporting large bodies. The frozen tundras, icy seas, and nutrient-rich waters of the Pleistocene epoch were a stage upon which some of the most impressive and awe-inspiring creatures in Earth's history performed. Woolly mammoths adapted to cold on land with massive bodies and thick fur, while seals, whales, and giant fish thrived in cold, oxygen-rich waters that supported their growth. The combination of environmental opportunity and evolutionary adaptation created giants that surpassed anything we commonly encounter today. In studying these Ice Age giants, from the woolly mammoth to the massive marine mammals and fish, we gain more than historical knowledge. We gain an understanding of how life can adapt in extreme conditions, how ecosystems can support enormous creatures, and how changes in climate and human activity can dramatically alter the course of evolution. These lessons are as relevant today as they were tens of thousands of years ago, as we face rapidly changing climates and ecosystems. The Ice Age giants remain a symbol of life's incredible adaptability, its resilience, and its capacity to reach unimaginable scales when the conditions are right. Woolly mammoths grazed on tundra vegetation, which influenced plant distribution and soil conditions. Giant seals and whales affected fish populations, plankton blooms, and even the structure of marine ecosystems. The large sizes of these animals were not only personal adaptations for survival, but also factors that shaped the very environments in which they lived. Their presence, behavior, and eventual disappearance had cascading effects on both terrestrial and marine ecosystems, illustrating the profound impact that megafauna can have on the natural world. Even today, scientists continue to uncover new information about these incredible creatures. Fossil discoveries, preserved remains in permafrost, and studies of modern relatives such as elephants and whales allow for increasingly detailed reconstructions of their lives. Ancient DNA from mammoths has revealed insights into their genetics, adaptation strategies, and population histories. Similarly, bones and teeth from giant seals, whales, and fish provide information on their diets, growth patterns, and ecological roles. These discoveries continue to enrich our understanding of a world dominated by giants, offering a window into an era when life pushed the boundaries of size, strength, and endurance. Woolly mammoths, with their thick fur and enormous tusks, and the colossal marine animals of the Pleistocene oceans exemplify how life can flourish under extreme conditions. Their size, strength, and survival strategies were shaped by the cold, the abundance of food, and the richness of oxygen in their environments. By studying these creatures, we not only learn about the past, but also gain crucial insights into the relationship between climate, environment, and the potential for life to reach extraordinary dimensions. These ancient giants were the ultimate products of environmental pressures, abundance, and adaptation, and their presence shaped the ecosystems around them. Their fossils and genetic traces offer clues that continue to inform modern science, while their enormous sizes remain benchmarks against which we measure the limits of life. They demonstrate that under the right conditions, life can achieve scale and resilience that seem almost impossible. Woolly mammoths thrived on icy tundras, while giant seals, whales, and fish swam through nutrient-rich oceans, their bodies perfectly adapted to their environments. Their story is not just one of size, but also of adaptation, survival, and ecological influence. It teaches us how species can respond to environmental challenges, how ecosystems are shaped by their largest inhabitants, and how life has the capacity to reach remarkable dimensions when conditions allow. The echoes of the Ice Age giants remain in the animals that survive today and in the fossil record that scientists continue to study. Each tusk, bone, and vertebra tells a story of survival, adaptation, and the intricate relationship between life and environment. The woolly mammoth, giant seals, whales, and massive fish were all products of their world, shaped by the cold, abundant food, and the rich oxygen content of Ice Age seas. Even in the present day, the lessons of these Ice Age giants are deeply relevant. Understanding the factors that allowed such enormous creatures to thrive provides insights into the challenges faced by modern species as they navigate a world increasingly affected by climate change, human activity, and environmental stressors. The balance of size, metabolism, and environmental adaptation observed in woolly mammoths and marine giants offers a template for predicting how animals today might respond to similar pressures. Ice Age marine giants, woolly mammoths, giant seals, whales, and enormous fish are more than just fascinating relics of the past. They are symbols of the extraordinary potential of life, shaped by climate, food, oxygen, and survival pressures. Their immense size, adaptations, and ecological roles provide a window into a world where life achieved astonishing dimensions. By studying them, we gain knowledge of past ecosystems, evolutionary strategies, and the deep connection between environment and physical form. These creatures illustrate that gigantism is not simply about being large, it is about thriving in a world of extremes. Woolly mammoths moved across frozen plains with herds that maintained social bonds, while giant marine animals navigated oceans filled with predators and prey, all while relying on enormous bodies to regulate heat, store energy, and survive harsh conditions. Every adaptation, from the thickness of a mammoth's fur to the length of a whale's baleen plates, was a response to environmental demands. In this way, the Ice Age giants exemplify the profound interplay between physical form and ecological necessity, a lesson as relevant today as it was tens of thousands of years ago. The enduring fascination with Ice Age giants, from woolly mammoths to giant seals, whales, and massive fish, lies not only in their size, but in what they reveal about life, adaptation, and the natural world. They demonstrate how cold climates, nutrient-rich waters, and high oxygen levels created conditions that allowed creatures to reach extraordinary dimensions. Their fossils and remains offer a glimpse into a world that was at once harsh and abundant, teaching us how life evolves, survives, and sometimes disappears. The study of these giants continues to inspire science, imagination, and awe. The remarkable size and adaptations of woolly mammoths, alongside the enormous marine mammals and fish of the Ice Age, show how life can flourish in extreme conditions. These Ice Age giants continue to capture the imagination, reveal the dynamics of past ecosystems, and provide insights that are vital for understanding life both in the past and in our rapidly changing world today. The dynamics between predators and prey form one of the most intricate and fascinating aspects of the natural world, and during the Ice Age, these relationships became even more extraordinary due to the enormous size of many animals that roamed the earth. Predator-prey interactions are fundamentally about survival. Predators need to find enough food to sustain themselves, while prey must avoid being eaten long enough to reproduce. In the context of Ice Age ecosystems, which were often extremely cold and harsh, these dynamics took on unique characteristics that were influenced by the sheer size of the animals involved. Large size in animals, whether predators or prey, has profound effects on survival. In prey species, being large can provide significant advantages. A large animal is generally harder for predators to kill because it can defend itself more effectively, run faster for longer distances, or simply be too big for some predators to attack at all. For example, the mammoths, which roamed across vast stretches of northern Eurasia and North America during the Pleistocene epoch, sometimes reaching heights of up to 13 feet at the shoulder, were not only enormous in size, but also had long, curved tusks that could be used for defense against predators. Their thick, woolly coats protected them from bitter cold, but their size also made them less vulnerable to attack. A single adult mammoth would have been too formidable for all but the largest and most experienced predators to confront. Similarly, giant ground sloths in South America, some of which weighed over 4 tons, had claws capable of delivering devastating blows, allowing them to fend off predatory attacks. Their immense bulk and strength made them largely invulnerable to smaller carnivores, and only the largest saber-toothed cats or packs of hunting canids could even attempt to take one down. On the predator side, large size conferred several advantages that made hunting more efficient in cold and challenging environments. A larger predator could tackle bigger prey, which often meant a more reliable and calorically dense food source. For instance, saber-toothed cats, known for their elongated canine teeth, were able to take down megafauna, such as juvenile mammoths or adult ground sloths. These predators were not only strong, but also built for short bursts of incredible power, allowing them to ambush their prey effectively. Their size enabled them to dominate smaller predators, securing prime hunting grounds and minimizing competition. In addition, in colder climates, larger bodies conserve heat more efficiently, which is advantageous for predators who must remain active in freezing temperatures while searching for prey. A smaller predator in the same conditions would expend much more energy staying warm, reducing its efficiency as a hunter. The interactions between giant predators and prey during the Ice Age were also influenced by the environmental conditions. Cold climates typically support fewer species, but those species often grow larger due to factors such as Bergmann's rule, which states that animals in colder environments tend to have larger bodies. Large predators required substantial amounts of food to maintain their massive bodies, and their survival depended on the abundance and availability of large prey animals. In turn, the presence of such formidable predators exerted selective pressure on prey species to evolve defenses, including sheer size, powerful limbs, protective armor, and herd behaviors. Herding, in particular, was a common strategy among large herbivores. Animals like mammoths and bison traveled in large groups, which made it more difficult for predators to isolate a single individual. The larger the herd and the bigger the animals within it, the more formidable the group appeared, and the higher the chances of survival for each member. Giant predators also played critical roles in maintaining the balance of cold ecosystems. By preying on weaker, older, or sick individuals, they helped maintain the health of prey populations. This natural culling prevented overpopulation, which could have depleted vegetation and disrupted the food chain. Furthermore, the hunting strategies of these predators often shaped the behavior and migration patterns of their prey. For example, herds of mammoths and reindeer would move seasonally to access fresh grazing grounds, partly in response to the presence of predators such as large cats or packs of wolves. These movements in turn influenced the distribution of plant life, as grazing animals helped spread seeds and manage vegetation growth, creating a dynamic and interconnected ecosystem. Interestingly, the sheer size of Ice Age predators did not make them invincible. Their size came with energetic costs, and they were dependent on having access to sufficient prey. During times of scarcity, such as prolonged winters or droughts, even the largest predators could starve if prey populations dwindled. For example, the extinction of many large carnivores, including the American lion, Panthera atrox, and the giant short-faced bear, Arctodus simus, around 10,000 years ago, is closely linked to the decline of large herbivores following the end of the Pleistocene. This illustrates that while large size provided many advantages in cold ecosystems, it also created vulnerabilities in times of ecological stress. The strategies of giant predators were diverse and adapted to the challenges of cold environments. Some, like the saber-toothed cats, relied on ambush tactics, using stealth and power to bring down their prey. Others, like the dire wolf, Canis dirus, hunted in packs to overcome large herbivores. These cooperative hunting strategies allowed predators to tackle animals much larger than themselves. The need to hunt large, often dangerous prey may have driven these predators to evolve greater intelligence, social coordination, and specialized physical adaptations, such as reinforced limb bones and powerful jaw muscles, which in turn affected their interactions with other species and the overall ecosystem dynamics. Size also affected predator-prey interactions in terms of energy efficiency. Larger predators could hunt less frequently but consume more calories per kill, whereas smaller predators needed to hunt more often to sustain themselves. Similarly, larger prey could store more fat and energy reserves, allowing them to survive periods when food was scarce, such as harsh winters or times when snow covered vegetation. This energy storage not only helped individual survival, but also supported reproduction, ensuring the continuation of species in challenging conditions. Over time, this led to a general trend in Ice Age megafauna. Animals that could grow larger were more likely to survive in cold, resource-rich environments, while smaller species either adapted differently or faced higher mortality rates. The presence of giant predators had cascading effects on the ecosystem. When large predators hunted herbivores, they indirectly influenced the plant life and the physical landscape. By controlling the size and movement of herbivore populations, predators ensured that no single species could dominate the environment, preventing overgrazing and promoting biodiversity. Additionally, predator kills provided food for scavengers, including birds, smaller mammals, and even insects, which played vital roles in nutrient cycling and ecosystem health. These intricate relationships created a network in which the survival of one species was often linked to the behaviors and survival of many others, demonstrating the interconnectedness of Ice Age life. Furthermore, cold ecosystems often demanded resilience and adaptability from both predators and prey. Seasonal changes in temperature, snow cover, and food availability meant that animals had to adjust their strategies constantly. For example, during winter, prey animals might retreat to sheltered valleys or migrate to lower elevations, while predators followed them or adapted their hunting tactics to cope with deep snow and icy conditions. The large size of both predator and prey helped them navigate these challenges. Massive limbs and strong muscles allowed animals to move through snow and ice efficiently, while thick fur and fat layers provided insulation against freezing temperatures. In essence, gigantism was not merely a quirk of Ice Age animals. It was a survival strategy finely tuned to the rigors of their environment. Predator-prey dynamics in the Ice Age also shaped evolutionary pathways. The constant pressure to survive in harsh climates and evade predators or catch prey led to remarkable adaptations. Herbivores evolved defenses such as enormous size, horns, tusks, and group behaviors, while predators developed speed, strength, cooperation, and specialized teeth and claws. Over thousands of years, these pressures reinforced the traits that allowed animals to thrive in extreme conditions. The interactions between predators and prey were not static. They were dynamic and often drove the development of more complex behaviors and physical characteristics, illustrating the intricate dance of survival that defined Ice Age ecosystems. The size and strength of both predators and prey also influenced reproductive strategies. Large animals tend to have longer gestation periods, fewer offspring per year, and invest more in raising each young. This makes the survival of each individual crucial for the continuity of the species. For predators, the ability to provide sufficient food for growing young was a constant concern, and successful hunting was directly linked to reproductive success. For prey, protecting young from large predators required both physical defense and behavioral strategies such as herding, vigilance, and migration. In this way, gigantism was intertwined not only with survival, but also with the perpetuation of life across generations. By examining predator-prey dynamics through the lens of size and cold ecosystems, we can understand why Ice Age megafauna were often so large. It was a combination of defensive and offensive needs, environmental pressures, energy efficiency, and reproductive strategies that favored gigantism. Without the extreme cold and seasonal abundance of nutrients in certain regions, many of these animals might not have reached the extraordinary sizes that we associate with the Pleistocene. The giant predators and their massive prey coexisted in a delicate balance, shaping the landscapes they inhabited and leaving a legacy of fossils that allow us to study their lives today. The study of how large animals move, survive, and thrive in cold environments is a fascinating field that combines aspects of biology, physics, ecology, and physiology. When considering the biomechanics of large bodies in cold climates, there is a complex interplay of factors that allow these animals to exist, grow, and reproduce successfully. These factors include the physical limitations imposed by size, the energetic demands of maintaining a massive body, and the adaptations that cold environments necessitate. Large animals are not simply scaled-up versions of smaller ones. Their size imposes unique constraints and opportunities, shaping every aspect of their life from movement to thermoregulation, feeding, and reproduction. To begin, movement in large-bodied animals is governed by both the mechanical properties of their skeletal and muscular systems and the constraints imposed by gravity. In general, larger animals experience higher absolute forces on their bones and joints with each step. For instance, the stress on the limbs of an elephant, which can weigh over 6,000 kilograms, is vastly greater than the stress experienced by a deer weighing a few hundred kilograms. The bones of these giants are proportionally thicker and denser to withstand these forces, a principle first systematically described by scientists as allometric scaling. This principle shows that as animals increase in size, their skeletal structures must grow disproportionately stronger than simple linear scaling would suggest, otherwise their bones would fracture under their own weight. This is why the legs of elephants are column-like, designed to support immense weight with minimal bending, while smaller animals can have more slender, flexible limbs. Muscle performance is also a critical factor. Muscles generate force, but their ability to do so is related to their cross-sectional area, whereas the weight they must move is related to volume. As animals grow larger, their volume, and therefore their weight, increases faster than their muscle area, which would seem to make movement inefficient or impossible. Yet, large animals overcome this through clever adjustments in posture and gait. Elephants, for example, rely on a more upright, pillar-like limb posture, which reduces bending stresses on bones and allows them to walk with relative energy efficiency. These adaptations are even more pronounced in prehistoric megafauna, such as the woolly mammoth, which could reach weights of up to 12,000 kilograms. Their limbs had to be extraordinarily robust, their joints stabilized by thick tendons and ligaments, and their movements slower and more deliberate to avoid injuries that smaller animals might easily recover from. Cold environments add an additional layer of complexity. In low-temperature conditions, biochemical processes slow down, and maintaining body heat becomes a critical challenge. For a large animal, thermoregulation is closely tied to biomechanics. Large bodies lose heat more slowly than small bodies because heat loss is proportional to surface area, while heat production is proportional to volume. This relationship, first described in what is known as Bergmann's rule, explains why many cold-adapted animals are enormous. Their size helps them retain heat in frigid conditions. Woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, and other Ice Age giants could survive extreme cold partly because their massive size reduced heat loss, allowing them to conserve the energy needed for daily survival. Energy requirements for these massive bodies are immense. The metabolic needs of a large animal scale with size, though not linearly. While a mouse consumes energy rapidly due to its high surface area to volume ratio and rapid metabolism, an elephant or a woolly mammoth consumes far more absolute energy, but less per kilogram of body mass. Nevertheless, to maintain a body weighing several tons, an animal needs an enormous amount of food. In cold environments, this is compounded by the need for heat production. Large herbivores in Ice Age ecosystems, for example, had to consume hundreds of kilograms of plant matter each day to meet both their energetic and thermoregulatory needs. This often required adaptations such as wide, grinding teeth, long digestive tracts for fermenting tough vegetation, and even social behaviors such as herd movement to locate sufficient food. Predators, by contrast, faced the challenge of obtaining enough high-calorie prey to sustain themselves, which could explain why Ice Age carnivores such as saber-toothed cats evolved strong forelimbs and large jaws for efficiently subduing massive herbivores. The biomechanics of movement in cold conditions also intersects with energy management. Large animals in icy or snowy environments face increased resistance when moving through snow, ice, or frozen terrain. Their mass can be both an advantage and a disadvantage. On the one hand, their weight helps them break through snow or maintain traction, which smaller animals may struggle to do. On the other hand, moving such weight over difficult terrain requires careful energy budgeting. Animals like woolly mammoths likely used slow, steady gaits, minimizing energy expenditure while maximizing distance traveled in search of food. Their feet were broad and cushioned, reducing pressure on snow and preventing them from sinking excessively. Similar adaptations are seen in modern-day polar bears, which, though smaller than Ice Age giants, exhibit large bodies with wide paws to distribute weight across snow and ice surfaces. Cold water presents another environment where biomechanics and body size intersect. Aquatic or semi-aquatic megafauna, such as prehistoric giant seals and whales, benefited from enormous bodies in cold waters. Cold water holds more oxygen than warm water, allowing these animals to support larger, more active bodies underwater. Streamlined body shapes reduce drag, while thick layers of blubber insulate against heat loss. The principles of hydrodynamics also play a role. Larger animals have longer strides in water, using their powerful tail or flipper strokes to propel efficiently while conserving energy. Oxygen-rich cold water allowed them to sustain long dives and maintain active predation or foraging, which would be impossible for smaller bodies with less oxygen-carrying capacity or insulation. Another critical aspect of biomechanics in large, cold-adapted animals is the skeletal-muscular interaction. Joints, tendons, and muscles must be arranged to support extreme forces without causing injury. Elastic tendons store energy during movement, effectively recycling some of the energy spent in walking or running. This is seen in modern large mammals, such as elephants and bison, and would have been critical in Ice Age megafauna, which often traveled long distances across vast, harsh landscapes. Without such elastic structures, the cost of movement for these massive bodies would be unsustainable. The survival of large animals in cold climates also hinges on reproductive and growth strategies. Producing and nurturing large offspring requires significant energy investment, which in turn demands that adult animals have access to abundant food and relatively safe environments. Growth rates in these species tend to be slower than in smaller animals, but the advantage is that once they reach maturity, their massive size offers protection against predators and environmental extremes. For example, a full-grown woolly mammoth would have been largely immune to attacks from even the most formidable predators of its time, while younger individuals relied on herd protection. This illustrates how biomechanics, energy needs, and survival strategies are intertwined, with body size influencing not only physical movement, but also ecological interactions and life history patterns. Climate change and seasonal variation further influence the biomechanics and survival of these animals. During harsh winters, energy reserves become critical. Large bodies can store fat more effectively, insulating organs and muscles while providing energy during periods of scarcity. This is why Ice Age giants often had thick layers of fat beneath their skin, complementing dense fur or hair in terrestrial species and blubber in aquatic animals. Such features directly affect biomechanics. Heavier bodies require even stronger skeletal support, and muscles must generate sufficient force to move fat-laden limbs efficiently. Natural selection favored individuals whose biomechanics were optimized for both energy efficiency and cold survival, leading to the evolution of enormous specialized forms in certain ecosystems. Behavioral adaptations also intersect with biomechanics. Herding, migration, and cooperative hunting all reduce the energy cost of survival and movement. Large herbivores may migrate seasonally to exploit areas with higher food availability, while predators develop hunting strategies that maximize caloric gain for minimal effort. The way these animals move and interact with their environment is therefore shaped not only by anatomy, but by ecological pressures. In icy tundras or frozen steppe landscapes, every step, every movement, is a balance between energy expenditure and survival. Interestingly, human-induced environmental changes in the last several thousand years have highlighted how sensitive these large, cold-adapted bodies are to shifts in climate and habitat. Many megafauna of the Pleistocene epoch disappeared during the transition to warmer, more fragmented ecosystems, likely because the combination of reduced cold-adapted food sources and changes in terrain made their energy-intensive lifestyles unsustainable. The study of biomechanics in these animals not only informs us about their lives, but also about how size, movement, and environmental factors interact to shape species survival. Gigantism in animals occurs when evolutionary pressures push species to grow far larger than their ancestors, sometimes reaching sizes that seem almost impossible. These enormous sizes are not random accidents, but the result of natural selection favoring traits that improve survival and reproduction under certain conditions. Animals that could grow larger often had advantages that allowed them to live longer, reproduce more successfully, and withstand environmental challenges that smaller animals could not. Natural selection plays a central role in this process. At its core, natural selection is the principle that individuals with traits giving them a better chance to survive and reproduce are more likely to pass those traits to the next generation. In many cases, being large can be a tremendous advantage. For example, large body size helps in defending against predators. Smaller animals are more vulnerable to attacks and may be eaten before they can reproduce. Bigger animals, on the other hand, can defend themselves, intimidate predators, or escape danger more effectively. Over thousands or millions of generations, even small advantages accumulate, gradually increasing the average size of the species. This explains why some of the largest animals in history, like the woolly mammoth, giant ground sloths, or the enormous whales that swim in today's oceans, evolved to their immense sizes. Climate stability is another key factor behind gigantism. In regions where the climate remained relatively steady over long periods, animals could evolve traits that required long-term investment, such as large bodies. Rapidly changing environments favor smaller, more adaptable animals, because large animals often reproduce more slowly and require more resources. During stable periods, large animals had the chance to thrive because they could grow and reproduce without constantly being threatened by extreme environmental fluctuations. Cold climates, in particular, favored larger body sizes. Physics dictates that larger bodies lose heat more slowly because the ratio of surface area to volume decreases as size increases. This principle, sometimes called Bergmann's rule, means that in icy regions or areas with long winters, being larger helped animals survive by conserving heat. Woolly mammoths, which roamed the frozen plains of northern Eurasia and North America tens of thousands of years ago, are a clear example of this principle in action. Resource availability also played a critical role in promoting gigantism. Large animals need vast amounts of food to sustain their bodies. If food is scarce or highly seasonal, extreme size becomes a disadvantage, as large animals may starve during lean periods. However, in environments where food was plentiful, such as nutrient-rich tundra, grasslands, or oceans with abundant plankton, large body size became a powerful advantage. It allowed animals to dominate their ecological niche, outcompeting smaller species for resources and expanding into areas where smaller animals could not survive. In the oceans, for example, whales evolved into some of the largest animals to ever exist because the seas provided a nearly limitless supply of food in the form of fish, krill, and plankton. Similarly, in prehistoric cold lands, herbivores like mammoths could feed on vast stretches of grasses and shrubs, supporting their enormous bodies. The relationship between size and reproduction further reinforced gigantism. Larger animals often produce fewer but more robust offspring, giving them a higher chance of survival. Additionally, size often deters predators, allowing adults to live longer and reproduce multiple times throughout their lives. This pattern can be seen not only in terrestrial megafauna, but also in aquatic giants, where whales, giant squids, and other massive species can live for decades or even centuries, reaching sizes unimaginable to humans. Over evolutionary timescales, the combination of survival benefits, reproductive advantages, and environmental stability created conditions that strongly favored the evolution of gigantic body sizes. Predation and competition also shaped the evolution of large size. In ecosystems where predators were abundant, prey animals that could grow larger had a better chance of surviving attacks. Similarly, in areas where food resources were competitive, being larger allowed individuals to dominate feeding grounds, secure mates, and establish territories. This arms race between predators and prey created cycles in which both evolved larger sizes over time. For instance, the saber-toothed cats of the Ice Age evolved massive, muscular bodies not only to hunt effectively, but also to compete with one another for prey and territory, while their herbivorous targets, such as giant ground sloths, evolved immense size as a defensive adaptation. The oceans presented similar pressures, but with unique twists. Water is denser than air, providing support that allows animals to grow even larger than terrestrial species. Cold ocean waters are particularly rich in oxygen, which supports metabolism and allows aquatic animals to reach enormous sizes. The largest whales, such as the blue whale, owe their gigantic dimensions to these conditions. Oxygen-rich, nutrient-dense waters allowed these animals to maintain their massive bodies, feed efficiently, and thrive across millions of square kilometers of ocean. Plankton blooms, which occur seasonally and in some regions continuously, provided a nearly unlimited source of food for filter-feeding giants, enabling them to maintain enormous energy demands. Evolutionary history shows that gigantism often coincides with periods of climate stability and ecological opportunity. After mass extinctions, for example, when many species vanished and ecological niches were emptied, surviving lineages sometimes evolved into giants to exploit new opportunities. During the Pleistocene epoch, which began approximately 2,500,000 years ago and ended around 11,700 years ago, large mammals like mammoths, mastodons, and giant ground sloths thrived in expansive cold regions because the climate remained stable enough to allow them to grow, and food resources such as grasses, shrubs, and aquatic vegetation were abundant. These conditions, coupled with the survival benefits of large size, created a perfect setting for gigantism to evolve. It is important to note that gigantism is not a simple linear trend in evolution. It comes with costs. Larger animals require more food, more space, and longer periods to reach reproductive maturity. They are slower to adapt to sudden environmental changes and more vulnerable to human hunting or catastrophic events. These limitations mean that gigantism is often constrained by ecological and environmental pressures. When climates changed rapidly or resources dwindled, giant species were often the first to decline, as seen in the extinction of many Ice Age megafauna around 11,000 years ago. The combination of warming temperatures, habitat loss, and human predation created conditions under which the very traits that once offered survival advantages, size and slow reproduction, became liabilities. Nevertheless, the evolutionary pressures favoring gigantism demonstrate a remarkable interplay between biology and environment. Climate stability allowed animals to invest in long-term growth. Abundant resources provided the energy needed to support massive bodies, and natural selection consistently favored individuals who could survive harsh conditions, compete successfully, and reproduce effectively. Across terrestrial and aquatic environments, these forces shaped some of the most extraordinary creatures to ever exist. From the vast, shaggy mammoths of northern continents to the colossal whales that roam today's oceans, gigantism reflects a balance of opportunity, adaptation, and survival, showcasing how life can evolve in astonishing directions when conditions align. In addition to survival and reproduction, gigantism often affects social structures and behavior. Large animals may form herds, pods, or groups for protection, mating, and cooperative feeding. Herding behavior in mammoths allowed them to defend against predators like saber-toothed cats and wolves, while social structures in whale pods facilitated cooperative hunting and protection of calves. These behaviors further reinforced the advantages of large size because being part of a coordinated group increased individual survival chances. Evolution thus shaped not just physical size, but also behavioral strategies that complemented gigantism. Another crucial factor is energy efficiency. Despite requiring more absolute energy, larger animals often use energy more efficiently relative to their body mass. For instance, a large whale or mammoth expends less energy per kilogram of body weight than a smaller animal performing similar tasks. This means that once a giant animal is fully grown, it can survive on a diet that supports its massive body without necessarily being constantly under nutritional stress. This energy efficiency, combined with environmental abundance, allowed gigantism to persist over millennia. Fossil records provide tangible evidence of these evolutionary pressures. Skeletons of Ice Age mammals reveal immense limb bones capable of supporting thousands of kilograms of weight. Teeth structures show adaptations for consuming vast quantities of vegetation, while skulls indicate large brains and sensory organs that enhanced survival. In the oceans, fossils and modern observations of whales, giant squids, and prehistoric marine reptiles illustrate how gigantism evolved in water-rich, oxygenated, and nutrient-dense environments, where the constraints of gravity are reduced and resources are plentiful. It emerges not from a single cause, but from a combination of factors: climate, food supply, predation, social behavior, energy efficiency, and long-term environmental stability. Each of these elements interacts with natural selection to favor larger size when it enhances survival and reproduction. When all conditions are favorable, gigantism becomes an evolutionary strategy that produces some of the most awe-inspiring animals in Earth's history. The enormous creatures of the past and present, whether mammoths walking across icy plains or whales gliding through deep oceans, are living proof of how evolution can sculpt life into truly gigantic forms when the pressures of nature align perfectly. The study of gigantism continues to reveal insights about the history of life and the complex ways in which species adapt to their environments. It shows that evolutionary pressures are not random, but shaped by consistent principles: survival, reproduction, and adaptation to environmental conditions. Understanding these forces allows scientists to reconstruct ancient ecosystems, comprehend the reasons behind species size extremes, and predict how modern animals might adapt to changing climates and habitats. Gigantism, therefore, is not just about size. It is a window into the deep and ongoing story of life on Earth, demonstrating how natural selection, climate stability, and resource availability combine to produce the extraordinary diversity of life that has existed over hundreds of millions of years. This detailed exploration of evolutionary pressures behind gigantism illustrates that enormous body size is a product of millions of years of interaction between organisms and their environment. It is a phenomenon that highlights the importance of stable climates, plentiful resources, and natural selection in shaping life, and it underscores the delicate balance required for such extraordinary adaptations to evolve and persist. Gigantism remains one of nature's most remarkable achievements, reflecting both the power of evolution and the extraordinary resilience of life under the pressures of the natural world. The fossil record and modern observations also demonstrate that gigantism is highly context-dependent. In cold, resource-rich environments, it is advantageous. In warm, unpredictable, or resource-scarce conditions, it often becomes unsustainable. This explains why large body sizes are more common in polar and temperate regions during ice ages and in nutrient-rich oceans, but rare in tropical forests or deserts. Animals must balance the energy cost of maintaining a huge body with the survival advantages it provides. Over millions of years, only in places where these factors align do species evolve truly gigantic forms. In summary, gigantism arises through the careful shaping of natural selection in combination with environmental stability, abundant resources, and specific ecological pressures. Large size provides survival, reproductive, and energy efficiency benefits that make it a favorable evolutionary strategy under the right circumstances. The Ice Age giants of the land and the enormous creatures of today's oceans demonstrate the power of these pressures and offer profound insight into the ways life can adapt to extreme conditions. Through natural selection, favorable climate, abundant food, and the interplay of ecological forces, gigantism emerges as one of the most extraordinary and enduring outcomes of evolution, leaving a legacy that continues to captivate scientists and observers alike. The study of gigantism also highlights the interconnectedness of ecosystems. Large herbivores shape plant communities by grazing, while giant predators influence prey populations, creating dynamic balances in their environments. In oceans, massive whales influence plankton and fish distributions, indirectly supporting other marine life. These interactions illustrate that gigantism is not just an individual advantage, but a factor that can affect entire ecosystems over long periods. Evolutionary pressures, therefore, operate not only on individual species but across communities, driving changes that can be observed in both the fossil record and contemporary environments. Ultimately, gigantism in animals is a remarkable example of evolution's power and creativity. It demonstrates how natural selection favors traits that enhance survival and reproduction, how climate stability allows for long-term growth and adaptation, and how resource abundance enables the maintenance of massive bodies. This account of gigantism, while focusing on evolutionary pressures, also emphasizes the broader lessons of life's adaptability. It reveals the ways in which species respond to environmental constraints and opportunities, how they balance the benefits and costs of extreme traits, and how ecosystems themselves can shape evolutionary trajectories. Gigantism is not simply a measure of size. It is an indicator of survival strategies, environmental adaptation, and the long, patient work of evolution sculpting life into forms that can withstand the challenges of their world. The evidence from both land and sea, from the past and present, consistently shows that gigantism is favored under specific conditions: stable climates, abundant food, and pressures that reward survival through size. Animals that evolved enormous bodies did so not by chance, but because their traits were repeatedly selected over generations, allowing them to dominate their habitats, deter predators, secure mates, and survive harsh conditions. This long-term evolutionary process highlights the intricate relationship between biology and environment, revealing how the natural world continually balances opportunity, pressure, and adaptation to produce the extraordinary diversity and scale of life observed throughout Earth's history. By examining gigantism, scientists gain a clearer understanding of evolutionary mechanisms, the role of environmental stability, and the importance of resource distribution. They learn how life adapts to extreme conditions, how size can influence survival and reproduction, and how ecological pressures shape species over millennia.